Alright, last but not least, we're going to build the collar, cap, and nozzle. So first thing I like to do is just sweat your pipe together with the reducers to get your nozzle ready, because it's going to take a lot of heat because it's thicker than the copper sheet that we use for your cone and body. So I just like to get that out of the way so it can set and cool down while you get your cone level and mounted and build the cap to the cone. So you just want to do this just like sweating any pipe. You just want to make sure you have a generous amount of flux inside the reducers all around the pipe and heat from the thickest spot to the smallest, because it's going to take more heat up there. So I'm just trying to get it hot evenly so I can touch one spot at the top with solder and it'll drip and follow the seam perfectly without having to, make a mess of everything. So I'm just tapping right there and you can see it roll right around that seam. That's because the heat's even and all the way around. So I'm going to go do the same thing down here. I just wanted to make sure that it was all the way around a good seam. We're not going to have any leaks there. So same thing, just even heat and then just tap and it should roll right around. Boom. Bam. Done. Now you want to wipe this off fairly quickly. You don't want to just grab it and wipe it off or you'll separate all the pieces. But it's important to just get it clean quick, or because if you leave burn marks on there, it's going to be a pain to get off later. When it's hot as all get out like it is right now, it'll come right off with a wet rag. But you'll end up putting 30 minutes of elbow grease into it later on if you don't just get it clean right then. So now this is exactly like the body seam. You're just going to want to flux the underside, line it up with the seam that's pre-rolled, clamp, flux the outside, and then put your little bead on it. So this is exactly the same. If you need to whip the rag out to get a nice thick seam, then do it. Don't be shy. It'll fall through on you. It's easier to just use a wet rag and do a build up and have a nice seam one time than to play with it for 30 minutes. You'll notice I always try, you don't want to touch the copper until it's ready to melt the solder. The heat of your metal is what will melt the solder, not the torch. If you drip on there, you're not going to be in control of it. You want to paint onto the copper. So every time you touch the copper, you're putting the solder on exactly where you want it, and it's not running all over the place with a mind of its own. So I did the same thing, just you can still see the seam, and it now needs build up, which I'm going to just use real low heat just to add on top and bond those two layers into one thick. Done. That happens. Sometimes you're just going to solder your clamps to your piece. You just got to hold on to it and pull it off as soon as it melts. And then I normally grab a rag and try and pull that solder off so you don't melt it to the next part you use with it. But now you're just going to want to give it a second to cool and then shape it into the best circle you can make for your cone. You're also going to want to shape the hole at the top of the cone, which I'm putting that rag on because it's a little toasty. But it's really important that you have a nice circle shape to the collar, because that's what you're going to build your cap to. So you want that circular, but the most important part is the collar. It's also important because you're not going to have an even gap all the way around the bottom if it's not the same shape. So I always line up the seam in the collar to the seam in the body just for looks, I guess. It can be done however you want, but you're just going to want to apply a bunch of flux just like normal, outside and inside. Then you're going to set it on there and try and level it. If you don't have a little level like that, just eyeball it as best you can. Um, this is a real important part for playing with heat control, because you don't want to just spill your solder all over the pot. What I normally do is jump to opposite sides to kind of keep the heat dissipated. So you'll tack one corner just a little bit, a half inch to an inch, and then jump opposite that and do about the same little bit. And then you'll go in between those two, opposite that, and then just fill the empty gaps. All the while, you're going to want to keep that wet rag right near you so you can cool it off and keep from it melting through and falling down like the flux is right now. So I'm just adding in cold pieces so I can melt them and freeze it immediately so it won't fall through. You just want to be real careful right here. As soon as it starts to melt, you want to take the heat off. The heat from this is going to do the same thing that it did when we were putting the cone in. It's going to open that seam up. So you just kind of want to handle your business as fast as you can right near that seam, and then just keep moving. And if you need to go back and fill a little hole later, then just go back. But don't stay on that spot too long, or it'll pop right open and shoot solder everywhere and stick on the skin in your arm hair, and no bueno. So here we are, just fixing it just like we did the body seam. If you need to use a rag, or whatever. It just doesn't take that much heat. You just want to melt it back together and blend it. I'm just going around making sure I don't see any big drips or anything that need to be melted back up, um, or any visible holes or anything like that. So now that we're done with the collar, we're going to fit this cap to your collar. So I just kind of put it around and get a visual for where about you need the seam to be. You're not going to want to do the whole seam width because then it won't fit on there. It'll be the exact diameter. So each collar will be a little bit different depending on how you did the collar seam. So you just want to eyeball. You got to remember you're going to have paste up in there when you're running it, but you do want it to be about as tight as you can get it. Just trying to bend it to shape so I can just paint right over the seam. A lot of the times with the caps, I'll just start in the middle, get my solder out there, and then melt and push it together so it holds, and then go back and straighten it up and build it up, just to make sure it doesn't jump on me or I get a big run going down the top, because it's going to be a focal point when you're done with the pot. Now that you're done, it's nice and thick and strong. You can kind of shape it as round as you can get it, and then just you always want to make sure that you can put it on the collar before you put the cap on the top. So I'm just making sure that it's the right shape and fits good, and I don't have to open it back up and make any changes before I butt solder the top on the cap. And this is just like doing the bottom. You just want to make sure you have a generous amount of flux on both the cap and the top, and then solder and press down to make sure you have a good seal all the way around, and then you'll go back and fill any little gaps that you may have missed and the entire outside edge. I'm just making sure it's centered on the top. Good Lord, cameraman's been drinking. another seam that you probably opened up whenever you were doing the bottom, and you just want to, whenever you're done with the pot, you want to make sure you haven't opened anything up that you didn't notice whenever you were building. So I always go over everything after I'm finished just to guarantee that it is all sealed up tight.
Needs a little trimming to fit in real well. Ream it out just a little bit. Just a little bit. There we go. So you just want it to sit in there, angle it down. And then you'll put all your heat on the pipe. Piece of cake.